advertising on manhole covers, fire trucks and even police cars.
Well, Cornelia Meyer, CEO of business consultancy MRL Corporation, is here to go through the papers with us this morning. Good morning, Cornelia. Nice to see you. Well, let's start with EU minnow, as it's described. Cyprus, it was pretty much inevitable, wasn't it, that eventually they'd have to seek a bailout?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at Cyprus, we have two Cyprus, right? We have the acceptable Cyprus, and then we have northern Cyprus. And if you look just how entrenched the acceptable Cyprus is with Greece and the sanctioned Cyprus is with Turkey, it was inevitable it was going to happen. But it's small, you know, they say here 4 billion, I heard 10 billion, it's really nothing. And there's another thing that's different about Cyprus. Cyprus is very, very important to certain Russian business interests and also to Israel as an entrepot country. So they have enough friends that can help them raise money and get through. So we shouldn't really worry about Cyprus.
Also as well, this is not to worry about it, but it is an illustration of the so-called contagion, isn't it? Because we've been talking about the fears of contagion, i.e. the spreading around. Would you say Cyprus is one of those examples?
Yes and no. Because if you look at Cyprus, it's so integrated with Greece. It's a creation of Greece. You know, this whole split between northern and southern Cyprus made it one part integrated with Turkey, the other part integrated with Greece. So it is a satellite state with the added ability of having other friends.
And also linked, of course, to the cradle of the crisis, if you like, Greece, losing its finance minister before he even takes up the job. I mean, this is a perfect scenario for jokes. Jokes are abounding. And on the Guardian page, you've got this is obviously the new Prime Minister, Samaras, who, of course, went in to have an eye operation immediately after being sworn in. And he's saying the economy looks even worse since they fixed my detached retina.
Yes, it's true. And as your previous guest said, if it wasn't that serious, it would be funny. But it is quite serious. And if your country is in such dire straits, you should really take care as to whom you appoint. And for a politician, health is important.
Absolutely, and it sounds like his health is in quite a serious way. But this article, though, does point out that it remains unclear who will assume the post in place of Mr. Rapanos, and also who will go to that summit
and that is
in a few days' time.
Unacceptable. I mean, if you're in that dire straits and you ask the EU again and again and again to bail you out, you better get your house in order.
All right, enough said.
Absolutely.
On. I'm feeling rebuked there.
You better listen.
Let's look at the Financial Times. This is very interesting, and the Financial Times is saying this is a draft report that they have seen that the EU is planning to rewrite budgets, and what this is in a nutshell is national budgets for Eurozone countries that breach debt and deficit rules are likely to be discussed at the summit this week. Powers to rewrite those national budgets. That would be a big step, wouldn't it, in the direction of more fiscal union? Finally,
because it is nuts to have one currency and 17 fiscal systems. So finally they're taking something. And I've always argued, I've been here, you know, for the past year, I've argued you need to have fiscal integration and you need to take some of the powers away from the politicians and give them to the technocrats so they're not beholden to electoral agendas. So finally we're moving in the right direction. The only thing I have a quarrel with here is, you know, we still have a 500 billion bailout fund. I think we need $1 trillion. We just need enough headroom that that we don't have to go and raise money again.
Now, obviously, the markets and everyone are looking for, they're crying out, aren't they, for some sort of political solution. Is this an indication that perhaps Eurozone leaders are getting themselves out of this policy muddle that they've been mired in for the last year or so?
I hope it is, but then you look at Germany, where you have some of the powers questioned, some of the delegated powers questioned by their constitutional court, and the president refusing to sign until that's through the courts. So I'm not sure we're getting there. I hope we get there.
But then you look at this article and you think of those. I mean, you say finally, fiscal union. We need this because you can't have a currency in different states doing their own thing. But then those who are in these separate countries thinking, hang on a second, this means we're handing over our more sovereignty to Brussels. That isn't going to go down well, is it?
It's not going to go down well, but needs must. It has to happen.
Well, some would argue it doesn't have to happen, actually. You know, in a democratic society.
If you want one currency,
vote in a different way.
If you want one currency, you need more fiscal integration. We don't get around it.
It's been suggested that they made a political deal on the single currency, but not. They made an economic deal, on the single currency, but not a political one. And this is where the lag is.
Absolutely, which is why we need to delegate. I mean, look, every time we come unstuck because of some political pressures, because of some electoral pressures of one country or the other, and that needs to stop.
And moving on to El País, the Spanish daily, the serious Spanish daily, it must be said, highlighting perhaps some of the tough choices that countries in these dire straits have to consider.
Yes, and it's very well, and I'm with the IMF that, you know, raising VAT is generally a good thing to get get your budget more balanced. However, I wonder, in a country with 50%, more than 50% youth unemployment, going up with food VAT, are you going to deprive people of food? I mean, that's what I'm worried about, looking at the dire straits in which the economy is, and many people in the economy are.
Well, when you look at the article, it kind of specifies there's reduced rates, super reduced rates, and higher rates, isn't there? So there's sort of a tier system when it comes to VAT. But as you say, it is quite a worry, isn't it? But it is ways in which the government can increase income. I mean, we had it here. There was a huge bulk of ours going 17.5% to 20%. But then some would argue, well, we're back in recession. But
yes,
so, you know,
exactly.
Who knows? Right, Moscow Times, moving on. We're moving away now from the Eurozone crisis to a degree. It talks about new Egyptian leader poses challenge to Putin. Of course, this is talking about Vladimir Putin's meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu and the various leadership changes going on, and people talking about what's happening and the changes taking place, what it means for them.
Yeah, and certainly for Putin it means a lot, or for Russia it means a lot, because they're losing their friends. You know, Mubarak trained as a fighter pilot in Moscow. Assad is a Moscow friend, so they're losing their friends. Syria has the only port that the Russian fleet can still dock on in the Mediterranean. He's losing his friends. The Muslim Brotherhood used to be seen as a terrorist organization in Russia. Russia has a lot of Muslims, which worries them a bit. So these are uncertain times also for Russia, and obviously they were discussing Iran, where Russia does not want to see sanctions and increased sanctions, and Israel wants to see increased sanctions. Hopefully they convince the Israelis not to go and have a military strike.
And finally, the International Herald Tribune. Desperate measures, perhaps one would say, about efforts to raise money, even advertise on your police cars.
Why not? I mean, what's wrong with it? Or let's say, you know, whoever produces the equipment for the incinerator, what Joe Block's company, we burn things. I mean, fantastic.
We sponsor this arrest kind of scenario.
Absolutely. I mean, why not? I mean, why not? If this is how you can raise money and alleviate the tax burden, you know, less council tax. Wouldn't we all like it?
It is quite. Some of these ideas are quite clever, aren't they? Because I was filling up my car and looking at the advert on that little bit that you put into the actual car to fill up, and I was thinking somebody quite some time ago came up with that idea, and I do remember covering it as a story. I'm showing my age here now because they've been around for a very long time. But you know, I'm thinking in 10 years' time, adverts on manhole covers is probably going to be everywhere, isn't it? In this country, all over the place.
And if it reduces
but
our
will I
council
notice?
tax?
Will I take in the message? That's what I'm wondering. I did on my pump, my petrol pump.
Yeah,
anyway,
sometimes
interesting.
You do. It is the ad agency who makes the ad so clever that you notice.
Cornelia Meyer, thank you so much indeed for taking us through the papers this morning, and thank you very much for being with us here at BBC World News.
BBC World News is connecting the whole of Africa through a brand new program. Our local correspondents are at the heart of what's happening right across the continent. We share their first-hand knowledge with the world and bring the world to Africa. With news, business, and sport, Focus on Africa is about how Africa is today, its achievements, its aspirations, and of course, the challenges. Join me, Komla Dumont, for BBC Focus on